September 3rd, 1260. A Mamluk general named Baybars kicks his horse forward, heavy armor creaking as he advances along a rocky path in the Jezreel Valley. Behind him, 20,000 Mamluk cavalry, each one carrying 40 kilos of steel. Ahead of them, an enemy that had conquered from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Vienna. An enemy that had never lost. An enemy whose signature move had destroyed every army that faced it for 50 years straight. So how did it happen? How did heavy cavalry, exactly what the Mongols specialized in destroying, pull off the impossible? The secret wasn't better weapons or more courage. It was something no feudal army had. The ability to flip the Mongols' own tactic right back on them. This is the story of Ain Jalut, and I can promise you it's not the story you think you know. For 50 years straight, from 1206 to 1260, the Mongols built the largest contiguous empire in history. The list of powers they destroyed is incredible. The Jin dynasty in China, the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia, Kievan Rus in Eastern Europe, Hungarian and Polish armies in Central Europe, the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. Every victory followed the same playbook. The Mongols met a larger army, picked a fight, and pulled off their signature move, the fake retreat. Here's how it worked. Mongol horsemen attacked enemy lines, fired off arrows, then turned their horses and bolted. To any medieval commander, it looked like they were running for their lives. Enemy knights, especially those in heavy armor, saw their chance to crush a beaten enemy. They broke formation and chased. That was exactly what the Mongols wanted. As enemy cavalry galloped after them, their formations fell apart. Horses got tired. Then the Mongols turned around. Fresh mounted archers appeared from the sides. The retreat turned into a trap. The heavy knights, now spread out and worn out, were surrounded and cut down. This move was devastating because it exploited two basic human impulses: the hunger for an easy win and the urge to chase down a fleeing enemy. For 50 years, every army that faced it was destroyed. Until 1260, what broke the pattern? Here's the puzzle no medieval commander could crack. The Mamluks were heavy cavalry, armored lancers. The exact same type of army the Mongols had destroyed over and over for 50 years. So how did they survive? Picture 40 kilos of steel armor on your body, a 10-foot lance, a horse covered in armor too. You're basically unstoppable in a head-on charge. A steel battering ram that tears through infantry. Nothing can stop you. But power comes with a price. You're slow. You can't turn fast. You can't chase light cavalry without losing formation. And once the formation cracks, you're sitting ducks. The Mongols knew this inside and out. Their mounted archers were the direct opposite. Light armor, fast horses, composite bows that fired while galloping. They never faced heavy cavalry head-on. Instead, they provoked charges, fell back, and encircled. 1241. Liegnitz, Polish and German knights, the finest in Europe, chased Mongols in flight. Result, surrounded and wiped out. Months later, Mohi in Hungary. Hungarian cavalry drawn into a trap and destroyed. The pattern was the same everywhere, deadly every time, and nobody could beat it. Even the Mamluks. But why were they different? The secret wasn't in the weapons. It was in who they were. To get Ain Jalut, you need the context of 1260. The Mongols weren't just winning, they were devastating the Islamic world. In 1258, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, laid siege to Baghdad. Baghdad wasn't just any city. It was the center of the Abbasid Caliphate, the spiritual and intellectual heart of Sunni Islam for 5 centuries. Hulagu demanded surrender. Caliph al-Mustasim said no. Huge mistake. The Mongols broke the walls, flooded the city, and spent a week slaughtering everyone inside. The numbers vary, but Persian sources say hundreds of thousands died. Baghdad's Grand Library, packed with centuries of knowledge, went up in flames. The Tigris allegedly ran red with blood and black with ink from books dumped into the water. The caliph was killed. The Abbasid Caliphate, which had ruled since 750, was over. For the Islamic world, it was like Rome falling to the Goths. But for the Mongols, it was just the start. In 1260, Hulagu set his sights on Syria. Aleppo fell fast. Damascus gave up without a shot. The whole Levant was wide open. The obvious next stop was Egypt, ruled by the newly formed Mamluk Sultanate. Egypt had never fallen to steppe nomads, but the Mongols had never lost a real battle. Then something unexpected occurred. Mongol Khan, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire, died in 1259 during a campaign in China. It triggered a succession fight. Hulagu Khan, who was running the Western campaign, pulled most of his army back to Persia. He needed to be in position to influence who became the next great Khan and protect his territory. Hulagu left his general Kitbuka in charge of what was left in Syria. Numbers vary, but most historians figure Kitbuka had about 20,000 troops. Not a full Mongol invasion force. Normally they'd field 50 to 100,000. But 20,000 was still 20,000 hardened Mongol warriors, and they'd never taken a loss. The Mamluks were in a tight spot. Baghdad was gone. Damascus was gone. They were the last major Islamic power standing between the Mongols and Africa. Sultan Qutuz knew that giving up meant death. The Mongols had a reputation for brutal savagery for a reason. Cities that gave up might be spared, but armies that fought back were wiped out. Qutuz made his call. He'd march out to face the Mongols in Syria. But here's the real secret of Ain Jalut. It wasn't just guts. It was preparation. The Mamluks had been paying attention. They saw the pattern, and they had a plan to flip it on its head. Mamluk means slave in Arabic. They were slaves, but not your average slaves, warrior slaves. Here's the system. Boys purchased from Turkic regions or the Caucasus were taken from their families and brought to Egypt, converted to Islam, trained for years under brutal conditions, cut off from their tribes, from past loyalties, from any identity except one, Mamluk. Their loyalty was only to their sultan and their unit. This created something that didn't exist anywhere else in the medieval world: a professional standing army. Most medieval armies were feudal. Knights served local lords, not a central authority. They fought for personal honor. They'd break formation to chase glory. That made them easy to predict, and it got them killed against the Mongols. The Mamluks weren't like that. Trained as units, fought as units, took orders as units. No feudal honor games, no knights chasing individual fame. Unit discipline was everything. And here's what changed the game. The Mamluks studied warfare. Not just trained, studied. They picked apart past battles, broke down tactics, learned from what killed other armies. And once the Mongols showed up in Syria, the Mamluks watched everything they did. Aleppo went down. Damascus went down. But the Mamluks spotted the pattern. The Mongols pulled armies out of cities, faked a retreat, then surrounded them. Same move every time. And it worked every time because feudal knights, driven by pride, broke ranks and chased, and got slaughtered. Qutuz and Baybars, his top general, figured out something no one else had. The fake Mongol retreat worked because it relied on armies panicking. If you could fake a retreat without actually losing it, if your heavy cavalry could pull back and stay in formation, then you could flip the whole thing on the Mongols. Brilliant idea. But it needed something no feudal army had. Absolute unity and discipline. The Mamluks had it, and they decided to bet everything on it. September 3rd, 1260. Baybars led the Mamluk vanguard, about 1,000 cavalry, into the Jezreel Valley, near a spring called Ain Jalut, Spring of Goliath. The name meant something. According to biblical tradition, this was where David had beaten Goliath. The Mamluks wanted to pull off the same kind of miracle. Kitbuka led the Mongol force, about 20,000 seasoned warriors. They moved in from the north, feeling good. They'd never lost a field battle. Why would now be different? Baybars advanced with his vanguard. The two armies made contact. Arrows flew. Lances came down. And then Baybars did what no heavy cavalry commander had ever done against the Mongols. He pulled back. The Mamluk vanguard turned and bolted. To the Mongols, it looked like every other route. Another enemy cracking under pressure. Kitbuka ordered the pursuit. Mongol cavalry rushed after the fleeing Mamluks, galloping into the valley. But Baybars wasn't running. He was setting a trap. The Mamluk vanguard pulled back in formation, pulling the Mongols deeper into the valley. And on the hills around them, hidden behind rocks and terrain, the main Mamluk force was waiting. 20,000 fresh, heavy cavalry in reserve. The Mongols saw it too late. Baybars stopped his retreat and turned. The signal went out from the vanguard, and the hills erupted. Heavy Mamluk cavalry came down both sides of the valley. The Mongols went from chasing to being surrounded. The move that had destroyed armies for 50 years was now happening to them. Kitbuka tried to rally his forces. Mongol horsemen tried to form a defensive circle, but they were outnumbered, scattered from the chase, and now facing disciplined heavy cavalry. Mamluk archers hit the Mongol line. Close combat broke out. The Mongols fought hard, but they were boxed in. Kitbuka died in the fighting. Some say he battled to the end, refusing to back down. With their commander gone, the Mongol force fell apart. Some tried to get away. Most didn't make it. They were hunted down and killed or taken prisoner. The Mongols were beaten. Badly. For the first time in 50 years, a force everyone thought was unbeatable was crushed in open battle. Word got out fast. Across the Islamic world, people saw it as a miracle. The supposedly unstoppable power had fallen. So why did it work? 3 things lined up, but one was the key. First, discipline. Faking a convincing retreat without your forces actually panicking requires something feudal armies just didn't have: total cohesion. When feudal knights saw allies backing up, their instinct was to break formation, chase, or run for real. Mamluk discipline let Baybar's vanguard pull back as a unit, keep order while they faked running. That's rare. Liegnitz, Mohi. When Polish or Hungarian knights saw Mongols running, they broke formation individually, each chasing personal fame. When the Mongols circled them, those knights were alone, without support, dead. The Mamluks pulled back as one unit. When they turned to fight, they were still in formation. That one difference saved thousands of lives. Second, the terrain. The Jezreel Valley gave them something open plains couldn't: protection. The hills let the Mamluks keep their main army hidden until the moment was right. On flat ground, that trap wouldn't have worked. The Mongols owned open terrain, where speed ruled. In a valley with hills, hidden heavy cavalry neutralized that edge. Third, the Mongols were alone. Hulagu had pulled most of his army back to Persia. Kitbuka commanded an isolated force with no backup coming. He couldn't retreat and come back with more troops, something the Mongols normally did. He had to win here, or Syria was lost. No do-overs. But here's the key point. 50 years of non-stop wins set a trap in their minds. The Mongols had used the fake retreat so often. Against so many enemies, it was automatic. When Baybars pulled back, they were sure it was real. They'd never come up against an enemy who had studied them and had a counterplan. Arrogance from never losing blinded them, and it was their undoing. The results came right away. In the weeks after, the Mamluks reclaimed Syria, Damascus back, Aleppo back. The Mongol soldiers left behind, broken, ran, or gave up. The Mongol march west ended, for good. Ain Jalut wasn't just a win in battle, it proved the Mongols could be beaten. The myth of invincibility was shattered. Hulagu tried counterattacks in the years after, but they all failed. The frontier held, and while the Mongol Empire kept ruling huge parts of Asia for centuries, it never again pushed west the way it did before 1260. Baybars took over as Sultan after killing Kutuz a few months after the battle. He ruled until 1277, fending off more Mongol attacks and building a state that lasted until 1517. Ain Jalut is his greatest legacy. Because in one day, in a rocky valley in Galilee, the Mamluks proved something basic. Power relies on the other side not figuring you out. Once a tactic is studied and beat with smart thinking and discipline, even the biggest advantage cracks. The Mamluks didn't win by being stronger, not with some hidden weapon. They won because they watched, learned, and pulled off something feudal armies couldn't: organized group deception. In a time of personal glory, they showed what team discipline looked like, and that changed everything.